So we're on to item 7.10, action on JLCDB, JLCDBR, JLCDBE, compassionate administration of therapeutic cannabinoid products on district property, or JAC's policy. May I have a motion, please?
I move to adopt policy JLCDB as recommended by the administration.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out, sharing their thoughts and opinions on this throughout this process. And I've said this before, but it's been a great learning experience for me, and so I appreciate all of that. And I am glad that we are able to help these children with this policy. So, thank you.
I've learned a lot from this process. Thank you guys very much. I've been raised up in an area where, marijuana use was extremely destructive. But I've been educated a lot during these last few weeks on the importance of it for children who are in need. So thank you guys very much for this education that you've guys given me. Thank you.
And I want to thank the public and staff for the civility in expressing the issues, concerns, proponent, opponent of these policies. I know that the state law was still on the governor's desk.
The newest version, yes, the one.
Okay. So, just so everyone knows, we've talked about this a lot, and the webpage that we put out, had explained a lot of the issues, and so it is concerning to a lot of people, one way or the other. And I'm just glad that everybody had a chance to express their views, and they feel like they were heard.
And if you pull up our public packet, you'll find that we've captured the conversation that occurred in our community for the record, both on our own web pages, and I believe we even have some of the comments that were in other places. We as board members read all of those things, positive and negative, concerning criticism, all pieces of that, and it helped form some of our questions and decision making. That is there for everyone's access, and it will be there permanently as a part of our minutes as well. So that people can see that we did consider it. And I think if you have the opportunity or the interest to go through and see some of those conversations, watching how people interacted really did tribute to the way that our community is living by our cultural compass. It was a respectful dialogue even when people disagreed, at least on our pages. We can't control what happens on some of the other ones, or and folks who weren't really necessarily a part of our learning community. I would also say some of the most passionate statements actually came from staff members who were allowed to contribute through a survey that was anonymous. So they didn't have to log in Facebook. We did a survey monkey thing that allowed teachers and other staff to comment anonymously about how they felt about us pursuing this. And some of the most passionate arguments in support of this came from teachers working with students in our school, in the general education classrooms where students were included, as well as on our special education staff. And some felt so passionately that they signed their name to something that was designed specifically to allow them to stay anonymous. And I found that fairly profound. I also want to say thank you to the families of these students for sharing your children with us and the gift of your children. I think sometimes we get focused on some of the other details, and I appreciate the opportunity for my children to experience the full diversity of humanity as they move through education. I think it helps them to become a better people, and it teaches my children things. And so your children teach my kids as much as my kids give your children an opportunity. And thank you from that, both as a parent and as a board member. And with that, I'd like to call for a vote, please.
Butcher?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Harold?
Aye.
Livia Wright?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So this historic journey in District 49 began 1 year and 1 day ago. On May 11th, 2015, Jack's Storms was suspended from school when he inadvertently brought yogurt that was mixed with cannabinoid pills to school in his lunch. His mom, Jenny Storms, spoke at a District 49 Board of Education meeting 3 days later, asking board directors to consider a policy that would allow students like Jax with severe medical needs to be able to use their cannabinoid products at school. This has been a year of collaboration, of careful policy construction. It's been a year of advocating for students like Jax at the Colorado Association of School Boards, of holding healthy community conversations about this policy and introducing our community to the students whose lives are changing, getting more time, more responsive time in the classroom because of cannabinoids. Over the last year, we've learned that some of these students have been losing more than 2,000 minutes in the classroom each year. Parents or guardians have had to take them off campus to administer pills, oils, or patches to stop frequent and severe seizures. Tonight's unanimous approval of Jack's policy in District 49, named after Jack Storms, is the first policy in Colorado that allows those learners with severe medical needs to take cannabinoid products in a controlled and safe environment in their school.
It is no accident that tonight we recognized 6 Falcon High School students for receiving military academy appointments, a Sand Creek High School student for receiving the prestigious Daniels Scholarship, and also improved an important policy. A policy which allows some of our most vulnerable students to take cannabinoid medication recommended by a physician at school in a very controlled and safe environment. It is the embodiment of what we mean in our commitment to launch every student to success as a part of District 49's strategic plan. We commit to a set of values we call our cultural compass, which describes how we strive to treat our work and one another. This process began firmly rooted in the cultural values of respect and care for one of our students, Jack Storms, who struggled to balance his medical need for cannabinoid oil while attending school, represented a struggle faced by approximately 40 students in our district. We spent the last year learning as a district, having hard conversations in a transparent process that authentically engaged our community. We believe our policy adequately addresses the concerns brought forward in those community and staff conversations, and we thank everyone who participated in the continuing dialogue. You helped us make a better policy. The overwhelming support for this policy within our community is because of your constructive criticism, open questioning, and willingness to share knowledge. This policy is not about District 49 deciding what is an acceptable medical treatment. Jack's policy is about respecting the decision of a child's parent and physician. Ultimately, this policy is about our District 49 family taking care of our kids.
Jack's policy has been a year in the making. It has been crafted carefully and deliberately to honor the voices of the entire District 49 family, from our larger community to our parents, from our staff to our students. We've carefully balanced all concerns that have been brought to the table with the needs of the approximately 40 students who can take their cannabinoid medication in a controlled and safe environment at school to maximize the amount of time they're able to spend in the classroom. In constructing this policy, we were careful to meet the needs of these students while ensuring the safety of all our learners. We have protected federal funds through a cease and desist provision. We have protected federal funding concerns through a cease and desist provision. If the federal government directs us to stop administering this policy or risk losing federal funding, we will immediately stop. While Jack's policy has been a year in the making, the recent passage of House Bill 16-1373 by the Colorado State Legislature will require every school district in the state to create and adopt a policy similar to what District 49 has approved tonight. The Associated Press is reporting that the governor is expected to sign that bill into law. House Bill 1373 greatly reduces the likelihood that families will move to District 49 simply to access Jack's policy. So we encourage other school districts across the state to use our policy and our team as a resource as they begin to work on their own policies. We also want to be clear that this policy does not change our position or our policy that recreational marijuana in any and all forms is not permitted in District 49 schools. Even after tonight's formal and unanimous approval of Jack's policy, recreational marijuana is still forbidden in District 49 schools.
I'm going to try really hard to do this without crying. I'm proud of D49 for stepping forward and working towards creating this policy for students when no one else would. It was over a year ago that the policy, or the state legislature actually passed the law, and it was a possibility to have a policy like this. It would have been really easy for D49 to have stood behind the recommendation of CASB and to wait in fear of the unknown and the unlikely. Because see, me as a parent, having been in hospitals and other places, know that the funding really wasn't at risk. The truth is the federal government is not interested in holding back our children from their education, and prohibition of cannabis as a medication continues because of fear and misunderstanding. On behalf of my son Jax, said I wasn't going to cry. On behalf of my son Jax and all his friends in need of cannabis-based medicine, who also need to go to school, I am grateful. As his mother, I'm grateful. Why? Because minds are changing, and some of the unfounded fear is disappearing with communication and education. My son, and many others, are showing the world of policymakers and rulers that cannabis is a form of medication. And to date, cannabis has been the only effective long-term treatment that has ever worked for my son for more than 3 months at a time. Now Jax will be able to take all his medication at home and school. We no longer will have to choose if he attends school, have to fear being arrested or charged with a crime while medicating any child. Finally, the needs of the child attending D49 can be addressed in all areas of their lives, including while at school, with their medication and their educational needs. Now it is time for other districts within all of Colorado to step up, create a policy, and stop taking away the important educational minutes and related services of the children most in need who happen to use cannabis as a form of treatment. Thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, as we get into questions and answers, Mr. Hiltz and our board president need to get back in and start the meeting. So if you have any questions for them, please do those first, and we'll try to get them out of here in the next 3 minutes or so.
I think if, and you did a little bit, if we could touch on exactly what will be allowed and what won't be allowed under this policy as far as medical marijuana.
We've carefully crafted this policy to allow all forms of cannabinoid medication when they are prescribed by a licensed medical authority, with the exception of forms that are smokable, which includes either traditional smoking or e-cigarettes or vape smoking. So it's cannabinoid medications in all forms except smokable, including vapor.
Why couldn't you just add cannabinoid products to the list of other approved medications that are allowed in the district? Why did it take a special, I'm not questioning, I'm just looking for clarification.
Sure.
Why'd you have to create a special ordinance just for this?
It needs to be a special policy because it has to follow a completely different process. Medications that are prescribed that are also scheduled under federal guidelines have to be administered by a school nurse. Both the state statute, federal statute, and what nursing licensure requires would not allow a school nurse to administer this. So we had to put some specific rules in place for how that would be handled. Specifically, the state statute, medical marijuana cards for students, and cannabinoid products all specify who the specific caregiver is who has to administer that. It also cannot be on school grounds other than when it's brought on immediately to administer and immediately removed. That's different than medications we would give students typically in school, which are stored in nurses' offices. So there were a whole set of guidelines that had to be there, and of course we'll be determining that process on a case-by-case basis. That's determined by a whole you can read our regulation and see the specific process we'll have parents to go through, because just like any other medication, you'll have to be able to demonstrate that there is no other way other than providing a dose at school. So just like an ADHD medication, for example, parents are expected to give their child that medication before they come to school, and it takes a special note from a doctor to say they need an additional dose before we would administer, for example. But because of what both state and federal statute are, we needed a separate policy.
Being the first district in the state to take this brave step, so to speak, if someone could talk about your willingness to help other districts, as the bill is on the governor's desk as we speak, that they will have to follow your footsteps.
Certainly, and Peter touched on it in his commentary, but of course our staff is willing to serve as a resource to other districts. Our policy and regulation are in our public packet now. They will be in our updated board policies, but certainly reaching out to Mr. Peter Hiltz, who is our Chief Education Officer, or Zach Craddock, who is the Executive Director of Individualized Education, who is the person overseeing this policy specifically. They would both be able to help them, guide them through the process as well.
Did you work with the Colorado Association of School Boards?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, our district, if you look back last fall, formally proposed in the delegate assembly to put within our federal legislative agenda, trying to get the federal government to provide a compassionate exemption to federal law under the Drug-Free Schools Act, because at the time we didn't have the protection under the former state statute. And I successfully lobbied and got the support of the majority of the school boards in the state of Colorado, and that took education. We had to talk through that process and explain why we were seeing an issue in our schools. And so the initial reaction of many school board representatives at that conference was, "Are you crazy?" And then as I started telling them about students like Jack's and what a difference it was making and what our specific concerns were, I got the majority of the districts to agree with me, and it has become an official part of the federal legislative agenda for the Colorado Association of School Boards.
The teachers, they had to say in the survey. Can
Yes,
you
ma'am.
elaborate in any detail why that moved you?
I think that just the passion that was in their words. And if you pull up the packet, you can read their statements for yourself. Some of the changes they saw in their students, the way it was making a difference, and then the brave step of signing your name to something that you're allowed to keep anonymous really made an extra statement of, I'm so in support of this that I would state it publicly in front of all of my colleagues and all of the world, because it's now online. And they knew that, so they were willing to take that risk for their kids, and I stand by them taking that risk.
When will this go into effect, and what's the process going to be like for staff, parents, and everyone?
It goes into effect next school year, because by the time we'd go through the process, it would take more days than what we have left in this school year, and we'll be training our staff prior to that.
Anything
Yeah,
else
good to
before we
go.
let Mr. Hiltz or
Sorry.
Marie go?
One question, you spoke about it earlier, if you don't mind, just a quick clarification. You said you don't expect students to need to transfer in District 49, not knowing how long it'll take other districts to adopt a similar policy. Would this be a grounds for a student to transfer into D49 if they were, say, somewhere else in town and knew their child needed this type of medication?
So as a parent of special needs children who has chosen districts carefully, I know that parents like Jenny will move across country if necessary. But we also know that the state of Colorado, because it has been a national leader in permitting the development, the cultivation, and the administration of cannabinoid medications, we know that Colorado has attracted families, but this policy particularly makes it it actually supports parents and students who are here. We don't think that that differential level of support is enough to attract people to buy into and become residents of our districts. And as soon as other districts move forward and adopt their own policies, it'll remove that incentive entirely. I want to thank you all. I believe that Ms. Storms is going to stay and we'll answer some more questions, but we appreciate you all being out here. And Ms. LaVere Wright and I need to go finish a meeting.